Thank you.
Ms. Lopez, you made it very difficult from an Austrian point of view to catch up here because according to the current OECD ranking, Austria is the last one. And it seems that Spain has made a lot of things very good. Thank you for being invited here, Pepe, for this nice facility at the law firm and the participation here. I have the honor to moderate the first panel, which has the title Key Problems of Individual Shareholders on AGMs, which is for the most of us in Better Finance and the World Federation as well, one of the key elements and our playing field. But nevertheless, we will focus on the other side as well and other influences on it as well. We will discuss the role of the institutional investors and proxy advisors. We will discuss how we can encourage participation on AGMs. We will maybe find answers to questions like, are the materials too complex? Have we technological barriers like virtual AGMs or something like that? And maybe our agendas are not comprehensible at all. So we will face an interesting discussion now for an hour or something. And I would like to encourage you, because questions are the backbone of our DNA. So please, if you have any questions later on after the discussion, in the Q&A session, we will have time for that. So let me introduce our distinguished guests, and it's an honor to have you here. First of all, ladies first, I would like to introduce you to Christiane Hölz. She is a DSW German Managing Director, lawyer from profession, member at ESMA in various committees. We know you quite good, thank you. A supervisory board member. So she will present more the shareholders' perspective. Thank you very much. Second is Antonina Nedkova. She is investor relations at Repsol, financial analyst and banking background. So it's more an issuer perspective here from Spain. Thank you very much. Wherever you like. To broaden the scope over the Atlantic, our next guest is David Kovel. He is a managing partner at Kirby, McInerney, a law firm based in New York, and he's focusing on shareholder issues and has a vast experience on whistleblowers, and he will give us the US perspective. Thank you very much. Followed by Sander van Prooijen, Belgium citizen and head of business and sales at Finvictum, a Belgium-Dutch company, which focuses on information and communication for investors. And last but not least, let me introduce you to Jonás Fernández. He is since 2014 member of the European Parliament and the ECON committee coordinator for S&D. He is a very brave man. He has led a lot of international delegations to China and Russia. And he is an economist from profession and was teaching at the University of Madrid. Perfect. So Jonás, thank you for being here. And as you are very familiar with our European situation right now, please give us an overview about the actual political situation we face on the European level, the status of the single market union, and don't depress us so much, please.
Now, first, thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you to Finance Watch, thank you Cremades and Calvo Sotelo, and of course, thank you all of you to participate in this event. For me, it's an honor to be here in Madrid. I live here for more than 10 years. And in Brussels, there are not so many organizations representing the voice of minorities Yeah, so I think it's very relevant in Brussels. Always in my office, your requests, your opinions, your recommendation on the proposal that we are working is always so it's a pleasure, as I said, to be here. It's not easy to if I have to start the conversation talking on these first months of the current mandate. Honestly, I have mixed feelings. I have mixed feelings, and honestly, I don't know how this mandate looks like yet. Yeah, there are many new groups in the parliament. There are new majorities, minorities in the council, in the commission, and I don't see yet a clear line for this mandate, or at least I have, as I said, mixed feelings. Yeah, if we come back at the beginning of the mandate, when we knew the report of Draghi or Letta in the summer. We thought that this mandate will be centered analyzing or improving the ways to increase competitiveness in the European economy. Yeah, so for many years, our economy grew less than our peers. We needed to increase our growth, our competitiveness. At the end of the day, the productivity of the European economy. And I think that both reports gave us a clear roadmap for this mandate. Yeah. If I have to summarize the Draghi's report, I think that there are 4 pillars in the report. Yeah, one of them is more single market. Yeah, and in Draghi's report there are many recommendations in line with what Letta said also in his report. Second one is maybe simplification. Yeah, the debate, the administrative burden. Maybe in the last mandate we increased so much some regulation that at the end of the day could be a problem for businesses. So we needed to simplify our regulations. Maybe the third pillar is a review of the industrial policy and commercial and trade policy. Yeah? And the last one is how we can finance this agenda. Yeah, part of the finance will be based on private sector, capital market union, minority investors, banking union. So at the end of the day, single market, and other part should be financed from the public sector. If I analyze the 4 pillar, as I said, in line also what Letta said in his report, more focus on single market, is that maybe we have receiving proposal from the Commission to simplify the European regulation, and also strategies, plans to develop a new European industrial policy. But honestly, until now, we have nothing on how we could finance this agenda. It's true that we will know the AMF proposal next month, so I hope to have more information before summer. And related with single market, I think that we have close nothing. And maybe this is the worst element that I can identify what the Commission has been doing during the last few months. It's true that we have the single market strategy published by the Commission 2-3 weeks ago, but honestly, I don't see any ambitious in the proposal. And we have also the communication around the saving and investment union. I'm going to talk on this matter now. The point is that we are, if we agree with Mario Draghi and Letta that we need to increase our competitiveness and we need to increase the productivity of the European economy, the real problem that I think we have is the internal barriers inside the single market. Yeah, and I think that we didn't talk so much about the AMF economic outlook report that we knew at the end of the last year, because the AMF said that the shadow tariffs inside the single market, so the barriers inside the single market, could be around 4% goods, 110% for services. Yeah, so the AMF reports has the merits to put numbers on what the Letta and Draghi and many others said before. So if we really want to increase our competitiveness, I think that the administrative burden that we need to remove are the shadow tariffs that we already have in the single market. Yeah, and I think that this element has not been taken properly by the European Commission, or at least I don't see a European Commission committed to remove the national barriers, to reduce these shadow tariffs that we still have inside the single market, if we really want to increase the competitiveness, the productivity of our economy. So if we talk simplification, and I think that we will talk on omnibus on these debates, honestly, first, I don't, okay, I could agree that there are something that we can fix. There are some overlappings that, okay, I think that we need to have this debate. But if we need to talk honestly on numbers, the real effect of the regulation and directives that we need to simplify now is close to zero if we analyze their impact on competitiveness in the European economy. If we have in mind that the real problem are in the shadow tariffs. If we agree that as I said, taking into account the numbers of the IMF, if we are convinced that we need to reduce or remove this 40% for wood and 110% for service in the shadow tariffs that we have in the single market, honestly, the debate that we have already around simplification have zero impact on our competitiveness. If we talk on industrial and trade policy debate, but my point is that we don't have enough proposal yet on single market. And I think that this should be the real objective, the real paramount of mandate. Yeah. Saving and investment union. When I started to work in the parliament, market union and banking union project were already there. Yeah. After 10 years, we achieved some objectives in banking union, but it's true that in the last years we did nothing. Union, many debates, we have many debates, many proposals. So honestly, I don't know how the Commission has started this mandate with another public consultation. If after 10 years, the European Commission doesn't know what we should do market, honestly, I don't know what they did during these years. Yeah, so we had a public consultation. There will be more public consultations. Come on, they are here to work, to consult and consult every year. And Finance Watch and other organizations sent ideas and proposals. Come on, we sent thousands of proposals in the last 10 years. Yeah, but okay, that's fine. Another public consultation. If we go to the communication, my issue on this matter is that there are some ideas or some proposals to move savings from the banking sector to capital markets. Yeah, this is one of the approach of the capital market union. Yeah, I have some doubts with that. Yeah, because if we are not able to have organization as Finance Watch to improve the literacy of investors, I'm afraid in some issues if we move many retails, many or how capital markets. But in any case, the problem is that in the communication there are not enough proposals to consolidate the single market. Because when we talk on capital markets, I think that, or at least I order the proposal in two approaches or in two arenas. Yeah, one of them is okay, how we could convince, how we could incentivize households, retailers to move their savings in capital markets. But there is another approach, and the other approach is how we could eliminate again the internal barriers, how we could consolidate a European single market. And I think that this is the most relevant thing that the Commission, the European institutions have to do in this mandate. And honestly, when I see the communication, there are many pages about how we could move savings from banks to capital market, but around single market, around capital single market, there are 3 pages. 3 pages. And if we analyze the working program published by the Commission, we expect a proposal on a potential revision of the supervisory framework at the end of the year. We have the securitization proposal in the next few weeks, but nothing else. More consultations. Yeah. So I have, as I say, mixed feelings. Mixed feelings because it's true that the challenges are very relevant. We have other geopolitical challenges in front of us, and I finish now. Around now, have enough savings in Europe. The problem is that we don't have enough investments. This is the real problem. We are not able to translate savings in investments. If we don't tackle the real problem by which our savings are not invested in Europe, said the internal barriers, the real economy, and if we move savings at the center to the markets, maybe our service will turn out, and we will not be able to make that investment, that savings in. So again, I have to summarize what we single market. We are spending, maybe wasting sometimes. But the parliament, that negotiation, we are losing. We are losing.
Yes, thank you for this overview. Very interesting. We will come back to one of these questions you already raised, having in mind that tariffs are more an operational level and reporting is more investors level. So what's our point of contact with the companies as investors is more the reporting side. And of course, we see complaints about this ESRS and so on in daily business. So there is a good understanding in the investors area for tackling something like the omnibus story as very important matter for our zone. The tariffs we really cannot influence as investors. It's more operational and more a national point of view. Yes, it's not real tariffs, but that's what you mentioned. I would like to broaden the scope to David to give us an overview where the money is allocated right now through a lot of ETFs. You touched that already. If European investors, retail investors have invested, they quite often invest via ETFs. And that's mainly MSCI World in the US, 70%. And I give the floor to you, David. You have a presentation already, I think, as well. And just show us how it works over the Atlantic.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak here. And it's an honor. It's an honor to be here at the Fernández law firm again. I come here quite often, actually. And I will offer the perspective from the U.S. There are obviously many foreign investors in the U.S. It's one of the great things about the U.S. markets is it attracts foreign investment, or at least it has in the past. I think one thing that I take from the current environment is that, at least, and this is an outsider's perspective, that in Europe there's maybe an opportunity to focus more on integration at the European level, when especially you see longtime allies maybe not acting the way they should. And that's just a personal opinion, editorializing. But getting to specifics, the U.S. market is considered a model for retail shareholders. From my perspective, I'm a critic of the shareholder protections because I represent shareholders and they're often harmed in the U.S. That said, there are a lot of really good things about the U.S. market, including some of the Delaware law structures. And I can go through my presentation. I'm not sure where it is, and give some perspective on how shareholder activism has been evolving over the last few years in terms of proxy fighting. So just do this. Yeah. Oh, there we go. So I'll just start with this idea of shareholder activism. There are all kinds of things that that means, I think. So for the most part, I'm talking about proxy fights for certain kinds of shareholder resolution, shareholder resolutions. But we also talk about it in terms of creating a different kind of company, removing CEOs, adding directors, breaking up companies, that sort of thing. That kind of activism is done by usually the larger investors, larger shareholders, big funds, that sort of thing. But this is a study. You'll have to look through me or us. Just a study of shareholder proposals. This goes through 2022. There are a lot of shareholder proposals. These are generally retail shareholder friendly kinds of proposals, but they also include those from activists. They've increased over time, but they rarely pass. You'll look and see that a small percentage of the total for the Russell 3000 index, somewhere between at its greatest, about 20% of shareholder proposals passed in 2021. But since then, it's been going down to around 10 to 15%. Now, maybe that's not bad. It depends what the shareholder proposal is. We're not talking about quality here. We're talking about quantity. But there are, but not a large percentage pass. And then next, we will talk about what kind of shareholder proposals we have. And these are, they fall into four buckets here. And this is only for a brief period of time, a period in 2023. But many of them are corporate governance. Back in 2023, a lot of them were social and environmental policy types of resolutions. And then there's executive compensation proposals. And then there's the other category. Again, not many pass. If you'll see the light blue bar is showing how many pass, which is a small fraction. Social and environmental policy, there are a lot of proposals back in 2023. You're going to see a lot fewer of those under the Trump administration, and you'll certainly see a lot less attention to that. In fact, you'll see designed lack of attention to that, to environmental and DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion policies under the Trump administration and through the Securities and Exchange Commission. And then the next is proxy fights. So this is, so I think most people know this, but the ISS and Glass Lewis are these proxy companies through which international shareholders and domestic shareholders in the U.S. markets usually cast their ballots. They are a necessary, not a sufficient, but a necessary component to success of shareholder proxy fights. You'll see how much they've been involved, and when they are involved, they are helpful in getting shareholder resolutions passed. Their involvement has been decreasing over time, at least the last few years. And then this is a success on when activists have been trying to gain seats. These are usually large funds that are trying to get seats, and then you'll have smaller shareholders voting on whether they should be getting seats. The percentage is actually not. We say it's been declining over time through 2022, but it's not bad. I mean, when they try to get seats, there's often success in the U.S. You'll see it, but in 2017 to 2020, it was about 60% success rate. Now it's down to 25, 30% success rate. But it's not bad when you can take over a board seat, then you get some control over a company. This is usually for economic reasons, changes of policy in the company, not necessarily for other kinds of shareholder resolution. With some exceptions.
One question. We have a lot of this seat discussion when it comes to diversity. Is it the same in the US?
Diversity in what sense do you mean?
Male, female managers and so on.
That is an important component in California, for instance, but and that has been under the Biden administration a priority of the Securities and Exchange Commission. I think it's not a priority at all anymore. I mean, the Security and Exchange Commission is a very different animal now than it was just a few months ago. And it's got fewer enforcement people. A lot have left. It doesn't yet have a director of enforcement, and their policies are changing, and there's really not quite clear what they're going to do. It's clear what they're not going to do, which is focus on environment or diversity at the board level. California still has policies in place that are intended to diversify by gender and I think race as well, or ethnicity participation. There was a famous example. Sorry, there was a board member that was allowed that came onto Exxon recently, and that was a sort of an exception that proves the rule. Rarely does a board member for environmental policy come onto a board of a fossil fuel company like Exxon. Exactly, and I don't think that the environment exists anymore in the United States, at least for the time being. Let's see, proxy fights are expensive. And that's a complaint that a lot of companies have. And they're expensive both for the activists who are prosecuting them, but also even more so for the companies. And mostly it's not the getting the paperwork out. It's really hiring the bankers, lawyers, and PR firms to advocate for your position.
What's the content of these fights?
The content of these proxy fights. Well, it depends what it is. Often it can be, if it's the large investors, it can be about control, about whether to divest, whether to break up a company, to add board members or new board members, whether to get rid of a CEO. And then, as we saw before, at least in the past, it's been for other kinds of corporate governance changes, and it's also for diversity, equity, inclusion.
So Glass Lewis and ISS formulate a strategy when it comes to get rid of a CEO.
They usually follow leads, I would think, but it's a loaded question.
Yeah, sorry.
Are we here now? Let's see. Shareholder participation. With Glass Lewis and ISS, you do have a fairly high level of shareholder participation. So that's a plus in the United States, and small shareholders typically through them. And internationally, just a graphic that one of my interns put together. Says there's good participation, that shareholders actually participate from internationally about via proxy 49% of the time, or in-house 41% of the time. And then they sometimes delegate their voting power 16% of the time. I have to ask my intern why that number adds up to something greater than 100%, but I don't know that as I sit here today. You'll see that the participation level is pretty high, though, from the international perspective. And then large activists, again, are refocusing now. The markets are changing in the United States. There's a perception that M&A is going to be much more favorable. So the large activists are probably going to be involved in trying to put more in 2025.
What are the large activists group? It's NGO or really financial activists?
I'm talking about financial activists in this context,
Elliott
firm, who come in and be very aggressive in trying to either have a company break up, divest, change its policies, all that kind of thing. So, and then there's a change. There are a couple changes that have already occurred under the Trump administration. One that may affect activists is whether it's designed to discourage DEI kinds of communications pipeline, for example. And there's something called 30G, where a huge percentage of a company not considered an insider if you're a passive investor. these changes are intended to say that if you start advocating something like change, or proxy contests, that will make you an insider in your.
Is that we know this discussion with ESG voting and the idea of creating a kind of antitrust law breach with the coordinated voting on ESG topics. Is that similar to that what you mentioned here?
It's directed at the same subject. This is intended to prevent people from being not considered insiders. If you're an insider, then you have bigger responsibilities, right? And you can't have material non-public information, or you can't trade in the same way. And this is meant to discourage that. So if you would advocate for DEI, suddenly you're considered an insider. The antitrust issue it's a big issue it's a big scary issue, but I don't think it's a good legal issue. But from the right, Republicans have been going after companies for investors for alluding to advocate for certain policies that these Republican governors don't seem to like, which are usually DEI or climate change kinds of policies. And they're saying that's collusion and a violation of antitrust law. I'm an antitrust lawyer, and I've advised companies that that's really legally an unsound theory, but it is a threat that scares people. Let's see here. We will. So very briefly, there's other ways of changing companies, usually through derivative actions under state law, usually Delaware law, or securities fraud litigation. We do a lot of that. That's not something I'm going to focus on now, per Florian. So I'll skip all that. But there are changes going on in Delaware law, thanks to our friend Elon Musk. There are more protections now for insiders under Delaware law. At least there's a proposed law change that will make litigation in Delaware a little. And then, but it's the one other thing that is changing in the United States under the Trump administration is shareholder proposals are going to be there's a safe harbor in which companies can ask to not or can exclude certain shareholder proposals, and the Trump administration looks to be trying to expand that safe harbor so that they can exclude shareholder proposals as a matter of course without having to go to the public, to the shareholder public, and that's generally I would consider negative, and I think this group would too. But it is a flavor of how things are changing with this new administration.
A typical European question: how sustainable is this policy? Speaking about the end of the term in 3 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so in 2016, things changed very much after the Trump administration took office. And then it flipped back under the Biden administration. It very well could, I mean, the politics in the United States are such that you can have a change in administration because it's almost 50-50 in terms of, who votes Republican, who votes Democrat. But the policy implications are very large, even though the differences are, on a knife's edge in terms of who votes one way or the other. So it could very well change in 3 years, very well stay the same. I'm not going to prognosticate, but right now I would not say we're in the glory days for shareholder protection in the United States, at least at the administration level, the policy level by the Securities and Exchange Commission. The only other thing I would, this is a point I like to make because I represent whistleblowers. In the past, and we'll see what happens under the Trump administration, there are incentives for whistleblowers to come and report misconduct at companies. And that has been a very good source of regulatory enforcement at the SEC. Large percentage of their enforcement priorities come through whistleblowers. And hopefully that will continue.
It's not functioning in Europe.
No, it should.
There's no protection for shareholders so far.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting. Yes, coming back to the European level, Christiane, we have 80% of foreign institutional investors in our market. I think in Germany it's the same like in Austria. And what is your experience with the behavior of this institutional investors, especially coming to this proxy fights? You have seen proxy fights already. Are you really aware of them, first of all? And second, how you as a minority shareholder rights association communicate with the proxy environment?
First of all, thank you very much for having me today in this very nice place. And I like the name of the auditorium, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I admire her work a lot. Not sure she is still well perceived in the US, but I think she's a great woman. First of all, I would like to respond to a point you made, Jonás, on the single market. We don't need more single market. We need a single market. There is none so far in the investment area. There is nothing. Cross-border voting is almost impossible. I tried to vote at Repsol a couple of years ago. I failed. No? In Spain, I had for many years the help of Banco Santander, but that was an individual issue. So cross-border voting is not working. The hurdles are too high. The barriers are too big. So consultation, I think, is still needed to learn from practices, from what is not working, to hear people in the street, to understand their problems. That's why I think for SRD2, which is supposed to be under review very soon, a consultation is needed because over the last years with the implementation, we have seen a lot of flaws in this area still and not enough improvements. Proxy. Proxy fights, yes, we see also in Germany. Less from NGOs, more from financial market participants, like the Elliots of this world. They are a pain for companies very often. They enter quite aggressively or can do that, but on the other hand, sometimes they obtain better results and outcomes on the price also for minority shareholders. I am just thinking about a case we recently had, not a proxy fight, but what we see is a lot of delistings coming up in Germany. And sometimes minority shareholders are not sufficiently protected in this area. And there, if you have a strong institutional investor, it can help to show towards the major shareholder that this is not enough. You have to do more. You have to pay more for the outstanding shareholders and give them some additional food. So the role is a bit twisted, in my view, of this kind of shareholders.
How do you communicate with this show? Do you communicate with them? Is there any?
Yeah, we do.
They're interested in your opinion, or they just?
They are interested in our opinion. I remember last year I was representing minority shareholders at a mid-cap bank, German mid-cap bank, which was in a proxy fight, and we were contacted by both sides, trying to advocate for their arguments towards the minority shareholders. Yes, and then at the end you make your choice. Huh?
It's the same. We see
It's the same in Austria, I guess. Huh? Yeah.
But we cannot judge then. Yeah, it's we try to mediate a little bit. Yeah. Antonina, I would pass the same question more or less to you from an investor side of Repsol. How do you address the proxy voters, the US investment firms? How do you convince them with your intentions on the agenda? I think it's a very critical daily business for you.
Is this one on? Okay. First of all, thank you. Gracias a Hermanos Calvos Hotel. And thank you to the audience for inviting us, all of us, to participate in this so interesting debate today. It's my first time here. I'm a rare avis, I would say. I hope they will invite me again after this participation, hopefully. As Florian was saying in the beginning.
Depends what you say.
Exactly, that's why I'm saying hopefully. As Florian was saying in the beginning, my point of view shares with you the perspective of an issuer and more precisely investor relations. In Repsol Relations team, we do deal with the retail investors. We avoid talking about minority investors. I mean, we do talk about people, physical investors, retail investors, okay? And those are not a minority at Repsol at all. I mean, almost a third of shares outstanding of Repsol are in hands of retail investors. So definitely not a minority.
There are only minority or individual retail investors. You know, if you break through the big investors, at the end of the day, there is a person.
So 33%, exactly. That's my point of view as well, which I internally try to convince all the high levels of management, okay? So 33% in hands of retail investors already is a big number. So that's why in the Repsol we have started from quite a few years ago, like 14 years or so, to implement a program to communicate directly with retail investors. So we do try internally to have that instrument you were talking about, Christine, to manage or work as a communicator between public companies and whatever other institution, financial institution, institutional investor. We do have at this point of time, like 80 million shares already participating in that program directly out of 380, 90 million shares in hands of retail investors. And we do communicate as well with, say, the high upper class of some individual investors that do have, like, say, certain amount of shares in their hands that amount to another 15 million shares. So almost 100 out of 400 million shares in hands of retail investors are in direct relationship with us. So we do engage with them. We do send them communications, not only related to AGMs, but also results, capital markets day. We do have a specific communication program with, say, contents through an IR magazine related to.
You communicate directly, not through the banking chain?
No, we do communicate by email. I mean, we do have their consent and we do communicate directly.
Congratulations.
And we're struggling to get to know the rest. So one of the barriers you were talking about, apart from Omnibus, which is another pain in our shoes, say, not to say another thing, is the fact that the banking system and the market participators do not communicate to the regulator, to Iberclear, real data with contact data. In this sense, I mean, we have postal addresses which are not accurate, but we're struggling, and the regulation is there, that issuers, the market participators, the banking institutions should share email addresses also. So hopefully now we've just passed through the AGM, which was the 30th of May, and we've received a new report from Iberclear, and hopefully this time we'll find around another 100,000 accounts. So we will be able to communicate with another, big portion.
Our parliamentary member is sitting right next to you. You can write down.
I'm just
what's a shareholder?
Making a hint on that some banking institutions do not comply with the obligation to share contact details, although they have them. I understand that's a big work for them and it requires money spent. into providing that data, but it's there. And in the sense, I would say that from our point of view, we're trying, to do our best to engage with investors, involve them in all the company decisions, not to participate into decision making, but at least to be informed firsthand from the company itself, and looking for that transparency. I mean, with basically bringing down what is traditional IR, which was basically meant for institutional investors, for retail investors. And that's the point, Florian. I mean, at the end of the day, at the end of the chain, there is an individual investor behind each banking or financial institution. And we're definitely committed to, empowering retail investors and democratization of the processes. We do bring back information to management, I mean, about like a barometer of a feeling from retail investors. We have not yet been able to, put on the agenda of an AGM proposal from retail investors, but hopefully you can manage saying that someday.
But when you're communicating, you said you are communicating with your shareholders, or a large number of your shareholders. That's the Spanish shareholders mostly,
Yes,
I guess.
yes.
So
That's the
cross-border,
issue. Cross-border.
it's an
I mean,
issue.
if you are interested into our program, I mean, you can sign up for it. Just give your consent that you would like to receive communications. The issue is that, I mean, 99% of retail shareholders, which are around 420,000 people, are Spaniards or based in Spain. Say not Spaniards, but based in Spain. So our communication is basically in Spanish, although we can adapt to English, but most of our publications and whatsoever is Spanish, because it makes sense for us, to concentrate efforts on this chunk.
I think you mentioned already one of the construction sites. We are already working on the review of Shareholder Rights Directive 2. And the basic question, which is still not answered in the European Union, what's a share? Who is a shareholder? Quite simple. Yeah,
Yes.
we cannot answer that. Starting from that point, how to communicate with this beneficial owner.
Exactly.
And we have tried in the Shareholder Rights Directive 2. We have tried. We can improve. This is definitely one point to focus on the regulator to make that much more efficient, to have a communication company issuer with his owner.
Yes.
It's easier to communicate with your owner. Should be very easy. Yeah.
You can if you have a contact detail. If
Yeah.
not, you're getting out on the street, trying to, deploy efforts and say some kind of marketing.
Yeah,
Here
you're
I
lost
am.
in Swift. You're lost in Swift.
If you're my shareholder, here I am. I just want to share with you the same information I'm doing to the institutions.
We make it very difficult for Sandor now. Sandor, you are working in a company which is focusing on getting contact with your shareholders. And please, maybe you explain a little bit what you're doing and what kind of information you provide, and where do you see the major obstacle?
Yes, also for myself, thank you for being here. Muchas gracias para recibirme. Like Emma already said in the morning, many people to Spain. I'm one of those people that have moved to Spain, and so far Spanish life is treating me very well. Also very proud to be here with this great panel today, and I hope I can be of value in answering the question you just asked me for. So I hear a lot of challenges from various reasons. Having the right data, knowing your retail investors, who are they? What are the contact details? Do I have the GDPR rights to contact it, right? And the information is hard to obtain. It's costly to obtain. It's hard to enrich to actually get the right information. And that leads to a lot of complexities, especially to engage shareholders to participate in your AGM meetings. But also for them, actually, the effort is needed to participate, and the barriers of language, technology, being in different countries, making it harder. So those are all the complexities that you see in the world of building that bond, making the share a brand, not just the brand of the company that the people know, like Apple or whichever example that we can give, with a really strong brand, but actually that the investors are proud to be part of that company as an investor and be able to become an advocate and a real participant in the communication around that. So I think that's a big part of the complexity. And that hasn't gone unnoticed. Basically, the organization Finvictum, the CEO, also come from the world of SEC and foreign private issuers, dual listed in Europe, with all the complexities that come in that. And that's also my background. Been working many years helping organizations to with their XBRL disclosures, ESEF, ESMA, as well as their SEC dual listings. So what we've seen is that there's parties involved. You mentioned the clearers, Iberia, Euroclear, all the different clearance companies. They have a lot of the information, but the information is not complete. It's not enriched. The banks have that information because Euroclear gets it again from the banks. The banks find it hard to provide that information. And that's also what the organization and, of course, the European Parliament are working on with the SRD2 mandate to make actually sure that we can have that insight, that we can GDPR correctly communicate with these minority shareholders as well, of course, with the institutional, which is already in place. And that's why a platform has been developed the past 3 years to help organizations to more easily obtain that information, more easily enrich that information, get a better understanding who are your shareholders, also the majorities, which are contact details, and having a platform to allow you to communicate with them in a different way than you would maybe communicate with your institutional investors, to eventually drive them to participate more in the meetings, drive them to be more engaged, drive them to be more vocal, stick longer with you, buy more, grow the shareholder value in general and of the company. In line with what Christiane said, what we also see happening in Belgium a lot, and maybe also in other countries, like you mentioned in Germany, a lot of companies want to get delisted off the market, right? But if you have a very high percentage of free float, how are you actually going to get those individual investors to vote for you to get off the? And typically, the individuals aren't really compensated fairly when these type, leaving it even less likely for them to engage and participate, possibly blocking your ability to get on the market entirely. And we've seen that happening also a couple of times with some of the customers of Finvictum that actually tried to get off the market and use our platform to try to engage them to get them vote goals. So I think that's those are some of the things that I think are very relevant. I'm happy that all the people from the European Parliament and organizations are really focused on how do we enable the majority shareholders, right?
You already touched the next topic, engagement, and the complexity of the engagement process and the documentation provided for the AGM. We are all aware that we have to read a lot of documentation. I think a normal AGM is nowadays 500 pages. Yeah, nobody is reading that except I or I have to read it. But a general average shareholder is not reading that,
or even being able to understand what's really in it, right?
And
Financial literacy, topics like sustainability, CSRD, all the complexities that come with. What do individual investors really know?
Let's focus on solutions. What are your recipes to engage people despite all these obstacles?
Well, the first thing is getting the right data, right? Without the right data, you can't identify the individual shareholders and you can't communicate. With getting the right data, which is apart from the clearance companies and partly directly from the bank, where together you can enrich that data, get the consent, and allow to set up specific groups to communicate with those groups of individuals depending on their interest, maybe sustainability, maybe activists that you want to control, or whichever area it is. I think that's most relevant.
So one of your solutions is to customize the information for the specific shareholder group.
Yeah, well, Finvictum helps to gather the data, enrich the data, upload it in a platform where you can actually see with dashboards how many people bought or sold, depending on the time frame of the data that's being uploaded. So you get real insights in who are your investors, who are the main ones from your private retail investors, and then allow you to, through that platform, set up specific groups and communicate through that platform directly with your investors through various platforms. You can send it via mail, you can communicate through social media, And because also a lot of personal investors are online, they're following social media channels where there might be other influence, maybe talking not so positive about the company that you're invested in, and then they're using that as their decision, maybe to sell off their shares. Where actually, if they would have had the direct communication from the company, or you could quickly ask the question, I just saw this post, is it really true that you guys are not focused on this? Where you can directly communicate and automate that communication based on the information that the company already has and all their documents and materials that are meant for the investors in their disclosures, to quickly be able to prevent that from becoming a worry and spreading out, because eventually the only persons that really know what's going on are the people working for the company that need to communicate.
Antonina would
I have
like
a
to.
point here, yeah.
Yes.
I was about to say that. I mean, customizing or adapting the message. I mean, it's precisely the same message you would give an institutional investor, but adapting the message and size and length, I would say, and format. I mean, we do a lot of audiovisual, for example, to explain strategy or to explain a certain project. And about engagement, it actually works. For example, with this group of top tier one, say, retail investors, there are around 100 people. Out of that group, we already know about three-fourths, sorry. So with those 75 approximately investors, which have 50 million shares in their hands, I just send them a personalized email regarding AGM, a month ahead of AGM, saying, hello, you are important to us, and you have quite a big chunk of shares. So please do not forget to exercise your right to vote. And if you have any further questions, please come back to me directly, okay? And I can manage that.
They
voted.
attend the AGM physically?
Some of them attended physically. Some of them sent a postal their vote. Some of them did it online. But out of 50 million shares, 0.5 to almost 11 million shares replied back, voting, exercising their rights. Okay, so, and we had around 26 million shares in hands of retail investors total in the quorum of the AGM. So really a big chunk of retail investors do engage whenever they see the company actually goes to them, adapts the message. And that's a relationship we've worked with this segment for the last 2.5 years. So, I mean, you're right. You need to customize, and first you need to know them, and then you need to customize.
Of course. Coming back to data, Christiane, I think in Germany it's a little bit the same like in Austria, that in fact we see less participations on AGMs since COVID. It's coming back a little bit, but it's not the level as has been before. The quality of questions has diminished, and the pure amount of question has diminished as well. What's your experience, and how you would have a proposal, an idea to encourage this participation?
The solution is very simple. Go to hybrid meetings. Huh? That's a very simple solution. It's a bit different than in Austria, in Germany. What we see is that at virtual general meetings, the participation rate is decreasing over years. Since we have the option in Germany to hold virtual general meetings since COVID, obviously, and a law has passed to try to make the virtual general meeting as equal as possible to the physical meeting. In my view, it had not worked, and obviously the shareholders do not like it as much as the physical meeting. There are different, so first there are different kind of retail shareholders, and there is a difference between individual investors and institutional investors. Institutional investors very rarely go to a general meeting attending it because they are voting in advance. Normally 2 weeks in advance, they cast their votes and they are done with the general meeting. So for them, it's not the platform. For an individual investor, it's the only time they have the opportunity to exchange with the management and with the supervisory board or the board of directors. That's why it is such an important platform. And if you take into account that the retail shareholder is the one there is a stabilizer in the company. He's the long-term investor. He's not running away when it's going bad with the company. So I think keeping this platform as keeping the importance of this platform is one of the main tasks also for the Commission, because we see everywhere that the tries to diminish the importance of this platform, and this we really need to counter, in my view. And I have forgotten your question.
You already put me to the next question.
Very good.
You spoke about this level of power. I think that the institutional investor relies on the individual investor. He's taking his rights on the AGM, because normally he can do the same.
No, he can't, because he has to attend so many general meetings that it's impossible.
Yeah, but the principle.
In principle, yes. Yeah, in principle, yes. And in Germany, we see the large institutional investors showing up at some general meetings, at the big ones, Volkswagen or Deutsche Bank, etc. But they are not everywhere, of course. And I forgot who said that. You had the discussion on you need to change the material. You said that, and to change the material for the retail investors, customize it for retail investors. I don't think there is the retail investors. Our members, for example, they are quite sophisticated investors, quite sophisticated. When we meet them, when I meet them at a general meeting, they ask tough questions to the management, and they have read the annual report. They have read, sometimes at least, the sustainability report, and they have read all the other 490 pages of reports. But of course, there are other investors, first-time investors, who have no clue what is going on. For them, it's good to customize, yes, but as I said, there is no such thing as the individual investor.
Facing the time, I would like to touch two other topics, and we must keep our time a little bit limited. The first is, of course, you already mentioned the virtual AGM scenario. And the second one is the outcome of the omnibus and what we expect from documentation in the future. I will start directly with the virtual AGM. David? Yeah. I would give the floor to David. We all know that there is still physical AGMs in the US, like Berkshire Hathaway and so on. It's an event, but how is the area set? The situation right now with purely virtual AGMs in the US?
I think there are purely virtual AGMs, and often smaller companies, shadier companies, ones that don't want to communicate as much, will do purely virtual. Hybrid is fairly common these days, and in person, if you're Berkshire Hathaway, is not uncommon either. But since COVID, there's a lot more virtual.
You would say that purely virtual is a little bit shady?
Well,
we like that. So
yeah.
Obviously, yeah.
Right. It's easier to control your communication, what you're saying at a virtual meeting.
Antonina, do you have an opinion to virtual AGM? How do you do it at Repsol?
We did it virtual. I mean, I think just the one in 2020. Then the one 2021 was hybrid, but it was really limited access. And since 2022, we're back to just physical AGM. I mean, it's retransmitted, but if you want to participate and if you want to ask a question whatsoever, I mean, you can submit a question and it's read by somebody in order to the management to answer, but it's physical. We're back to physical for the same reason that Christine was saying. I mean, it's definitely the day in the year in which retail investors are like empowered to talk to the management. I'm struggling internally and might invite you, all of you, to come with me to Repsol headquarters, because I'm struggling to get at least another day or two in the year in which management would sit, probably not with the 400,000 investors, but at least with some small chunk of investors, to discuss it, just to bring the company back to its owners.
Great. Christiane, you already mentioned that Germany has another approach, partially.
Well, we have virtual or on-site. We have not a real fully fledged hybrid meeting yet. We are advocating for this because I think it brings together the best of both worlds. But in Germany, it's not yet possible so far. What we see is that the large companies are the majority of the DAX companies, I think, is still doing virtual meetings, while the smaller companies, mid-size and smaller companies, go back to on-site meetings. Exactly for this reason, they want to exchange with their investors. They want a real exchange. They don't want to hide behind a screen, and they don't have so many opportunities like the big companies to exchange in analyst conferences, or I don't know, in investor conference, or on fairs, etc. But Mr. Fernández, you were asking what you can do. First of all, you are at European level, so increase cross-border participation, reduce the barriers to cross-border participation. I give you one example. I have a deposit where my shares are in a German small bank. Bank sends me a communication under SRD2 saying, you have shares in Repsol. You can vote at the general meeting. For further information, please contact Repsol. Full stop. So as an investor, what do? I try investor relations, and maybe Repsol is different, but I can tell you in 99% you will not even get a response, because Repsol would not know that I am the shareholder.
Exactly. I mean, I cannot provide you. First of all, we do not have, we cannot issue participation cards for investors.
Exactly.
First of all, at least in the Repsol, not yet. And second of all, even if I can, because there's some in practice tool that we use for certain cases whatsoever, which is not extended yet. But say I could issue you a participation card for the AGM. If I cannot correctly identify you as a shareholder, I cannot do anything. And that's the same situation with the omnibus. And it's not only for foreign investors, it's not only cross-border. Recently, we have found that some of our Spanish investors change of the ownership of the institution in which they have deposited their shares. Automatically, the new owner of the banking institution sends an email, and it's with tacit consent that, hey, from now on, your shares will pass to this omnibus account. And the shareholders call us and say, I cannot vote with my shares. The only thing that they offer me is they say, we will vote for you. And he's like, what if I have a different opinion from yours? Well, pay 40 euros and we will let you get into our tool and choose your voting sense. But you can never have that participation card, and do it whatever you want. And that's a Spanish investor.
Yeah, the omnibus accounts, it's a big problem.
That's the biggest problem, the omnibus accounts. So improve the investment chain, the intermediaries chain, because David, you showed the voting process in the US. It's so simple. In Germany, in Europe, you have, I don't know how many intermediaries in the chain if you want to go cross-border. That's super complicated. And for the end investor, for the individual investor, it comes with costs. Not only for the investor, for the company. It's and if you have to pay even 10 euros to vote at a general meeting as an individual investor, you will not do it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you will not do it. So cost is intermediary chain is a problem. The definition of shareholder, the biggest problem. Yeah. So
there's this nice example of a big fund based in Cayman Islands, which is a pension fund I think, for Australian mathematical teachers. And they invest heavily in airports around the world. And due to the fact that they are registered in Grand Cayman, they are intransparent. So it gets real big problems to get them approved from a foreign direct investment point of view in the European Union to be a professional and very good shareholder, in fact, for these facilities like airports. It's so crazy. In the US, it's easy, but in Europe, it's a very complicated and prohibitive costs for individual shareholders. You mentioned already, it's difficult for a small shareholder to get through the entire chain with a limited cost, and that's difficult. Coming to the end with the famous omnibus procedure going now in the European Union, we know, excuse me, we know already that there is 2 parts of omnibus. Yeah, it's a revision of ESRS and a lot of taxonomy involved regulation. So there are 2 parts. The first part is so-called stop the clock, like formerly at a McDonald's or somewhere, you stop the clock. So you have that this implementation of these rules is stopped right now. This part is already done. And the second part, we are already in a negotiation and consulting phase, is exactly what is happening in the materials of this change. This has caused in our market a lot of problems because the big companies already are aware of ESRS as it is, and they have invested a lot of money. And now they see, oh, maybe omnibus is coming and it's with much lower regulation. So they are a little bit afraid. Big Four, nobody knows. They have invested heavily in this as well. So this omnibus makes a little bit noise in the market. Let me add one remark as well. It has increased the reporting ESRS immense. It's a lot of pages, 200, 300, 400 pages. And concerning the last season, I have to say that the amount of questions on the AGMs related to ESRS was only from specialized investors. It was not the average investor who has really focused on ESRS. I think they are still in a learning phase, reading phase, learning phase. That was my observation. Do you share that, more or less? Sandor, maybe you can give us an opinion on your impression on omnibus and how it...
I'm actually not completely familiar with this topic, Florian.
Okay, thank you. Christiane, if you want to add.
I confirm that in Germany, at least the general meetings I attended, the questions on the sustainability report were rather low, the number of questions. I think this has a lot to do with the design of the ESRS, whereas the IFRS, so the financial reporting standards, have been developed over, I don't know how many years, 10, 12, 15 years. The ESRS have been composed within 1 year or a bit more. So it was, I would not say quick and dirty, but it was a quick issue, and which certainly has some flaws. I read quite a few of the sustainability reports, and I can tell you it's not fun. No? It's rather boring because it's repetitive. It's very few graphs. It's nothing you like to read. I preferred the previous reports, which where companies were able to focus on what was important for them. Now it's really poof, 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 poof. It's too straight format. So I don't think it gives a lot of value to an investor, and I doubt that any investor will focus his or her investment decision on an ESRS report. In addition, I heard from companies, at least from German companies, 2 or 3 told me that they get questionnaires from, maybe you can confirm that, they get questionnaires from institutional investors for certain points on their sustainability, on sustainability topics. And so the companies say, yeah, but read our ESRS report. And they say, no way, it's too long. It's too difficult to read. We want to have our question answered. So for whom is this report then? For whom is it made if it's not only for the regulation?
Antonina,
I'm sorry, I am speaking not as an investor, but that's really the point of view I discovered throughout the first season of the ESRS reports.
I cannot answer that question for whom this report is meant. I can tell you our perspective of what we do. We have 2, 3 people not designated on the team, of our team, related with just the say ESG topics. So they do attend specifically most related topics to that, and we do have quite a lot of investors with that criteria in Repsol shareholder holding. So they do talk all about that. But on AGM, rarely we would see topics related to some environmental in the past, maybe some governance as well in the past, but we would mainly see now related, say, with dividend policy, with strategy in general, with the change the company is experiencing from, like the net zero climate proposal the company has for 2050 whatsoever. Those are the type of issues. And we do publish from an ESG perspective, and it's a colleague of mine that leads that. If you want to, I can put you in contact with a report which is not sustainability reporting. It's ours, investor relations engagement report, which I can say, at least from my human opinion, not specialist in ESG, it's quite easier to read that compared with the accounts.
we come to, before we come to the question from the audience, what is your expectation of the outcome of the omnibus procedure? And I think you have a lot of remarks you can answer.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the final will be. Yes, now? Yes, now. No, I say that I don't know. Some point. I'm not aware that in the last mandate we passed the different pieces by different commissioners. So it's true that when we analyze some of them or all of them, it's true that there are some overlappings in some cases. Yeah, for example, I was the report banking regulation. We introduced there CRD some element requirements to transparent to report on climate issues, for example. But it's true that banks has to report through other regulations, maybe more or less the same risk. Yeah. So
you know the result of this reporting. We have hundreds of pages with 0% or 0.
Yeah.
When it comes to banking sustainability reports.
Yes.
These are or insurance companies. Yeah. These are the most ridiculous ESRS reports you can read. Yeah. Unbelievable, not understandable. Yeah. To be honest.
The point is, as I said, that there are and I do think that there is a moment to streamline the framework. The problem is, or maybe the issue is when we enter in details. The political line is clear. Overlapping, we need to streamline the regulation. But when we enter in details and we discuss this issue with different stakeholders, the problem is that nobody wants the administrative burden or the reporting burden that you have to comply. But of course, they want the others keep reporting burden that they need for the. Now, just before of this debate, we were talking about will provide better information to the companies to know who their shareholders are. And if we talk with the bankers, they say this is so much. This is an administrative burden, a reporting burden. So the debate, if we enter in details on reportings, is that nobody wants to comply with the reports that they have to do, but they want to keep the rest. Yeah. So legislators need to find the balance. Yeah, on this debate. And my point is maybe more political. Yes. Now better. Yes. My point on this debate is more political, because it's true that here we don't have a Trump administration yet. Yeah. But in the parliament, I don't know, but between 25%, 30% of the MEPs are from groups close to Trump or close to Putin. But I don't know who is worse, or I know who is worse, but the situation is as it is. Yeah. So around 30% of the members are from parties, from political parties, who are advocating the same that Trump is doing in the States, or in some cases even worse. Yeah. And when we enter in the negotiations, the point is that the geometry of the negotiations changed so much from the last mandate, because now the EPP, in theory, the EPP has the possibility to build majorities in the parliament with these groups. Yeah, I think that this possibility is more theoretical than real, because in these different groups there are many crazy people, where I think that it's completely impossible to negotiate, because at the end of the day, they don't want to negotiate, they don't want to participate in the legislative work. They are there to advocate, to show, to criticize, to fight against the European Union itself, and not to participate in the work. But until now, in the EPP, there are many people who didn't realize, who haven't realized yet this new game of this mandate. So coming back and trying to summarize, I understand well that we need to streamline the regulation, but trying to balance the different requests from different stakeholders. Yeah, the problem is more political. We are just at the beginning of the mandate. We are trying to define the majorities which will be in the base of the governing work in the union during the next few years. We have many Trumpist or Putinist governments also in the council. So the situation, the political situation is not easy. Yeah. And by the way, this omnibus proposal, this is the first legislative proposal that we have this mandate in the parliament. So this debate will define how the union will work during the rest of the mandate. And until now, what we are seeing is that in the EPP, they are playing, or they are seeing how kind of majorities they can build with other groups. The socialist group, we are also in a no easy situation, because we realize that we need to streamline the regulation. The proposal of the commissions, I think that they are not bad, but we don't want to water down at the end of the day the regulation that we pass. So we understand that there is room to improve, but we don't want to water down the regulation that we have in place. And the majorities, the majorities are there, and until now they are not completely clear.
Thank you very much. So I would like to give the floor to the audience to raise some short questions for the last 3 minutes. Is there any question left to the audience? Mark, please.
Thank you very much. Fantastic panel. I'm not sure it's going to be 3 minutes, but I'll try. We're in 2025. It's a digital world. We have artificial intelligence left, right, and center. There's a very simple concept, which is that companies are required to produce a huge amount of data and to run meetings, to do all of that in communication with and on behalf of their members. And their members have rights and obligations. And those rights are not just voting, they're also communication, they're the rights to submit resolutions, and so on and so forth. And that all works perfectly well until, and we've allowed this to happen, I think that might be my phone. We've allowed this to happen until a broker decides to interpose a custody service which acts as a block, which refuses to pass that information and those rights through to shareholders, and doesn't allow shareholders to communicate with the company, and doesn't even allow the companies to know who those shareholders are. Information sits with the nominee or the custodian. We simply should, in this day and age, have a legislation which says, if you are going to assume that position, if you're going to put yourself in that intermediate position, there is a minimum service level. That minimum service level says you will pass the information unless the individual at the end of the chain has decided to switch it off or has decided to appoint a proxy. In all other cases, it's going to wash across them. If that happens, you're going to increase the participation rates in AGMs. You're going to increase the proxy votes that you receive. You're going to increase the knowledge that exists within retail investors, the feeling of ownership, and so on and so forth. And you're going to allow companies to know who their owners are and to communicate with them. So the simple question is, why can we not legislate to say, for zero incremental cost, as a minimum business proposition, you must facilitate two-way communication between companies and shareholders. And if you don't do that, don't put yourself in the intermediary position. The marginal costs of doing that in a fully digital world are not zero, but they're very close to it.
Good question. I think the answer is included.
The answer is included. I think you can even make it even more simple. Just require companies and the intermediaries to confirm the voting of investors. So if they are legally required to confirm the vote, that the vote has been exercised, then they will do it. Because if not, they can be sued by the investors. So that's a very simple tool as well. And it's already in SRD2, but it's not strong enough. The wording is not strong enough.
Other questions?
Thank you very much. Can you hear? It's very interesting. The panel has been super interesting. The comparison between the American experience and the European one. I think that there are many differences. The second point is that it's amazing that we are still talking about the achievement of the single market after more than 70 years of European integration. So my question would be, why is it so different? Why in the States we're not speaking at all about achieving a single market? Well, because there is a single market inside the United States. So my question would be more about the forest than about the trees. I think that the European Union lacks legitimacy in order to impose many of the changes that our member of parliament, European Parliament, spoke about. So how about democracy? How about democracy in the European Union? Unless the European Union does not become a fully fledged democracy, I think that all the changes that Jonás was mentioning are going to be very difficult to be implemented. I would like to hear your views about that.
I think you were addressed, so you can.
No, on the last issue, honestly, I think that the legitimacy of the European democracy works much better than other national democracies in Europe. And I think that this is a long debate, but if we analyze what the Spanish Congress does, and you compare what the National Congress and our Senate do with what we do in the European Parliament, I think that the European institutions has higher legitimacy than the national ones. But this is a long debate, yeah. But I don't share this. I don't share the argument that in the European Union the democracy is not as good as national level. And if we compare the European democracy with the Italian, with the German, with the British democracy, with the French democracy, honestly, there are differences among them, but I cannot say that one of them is democracy better than the other. Yeah, and we can enter in that debate, but I think that this is not the audience or the moment to have this conversation.
Around some of the challenges that you see within the European Union, different countries, different culture, different languages, and even different regulations still individually. Looking at the SRD2 mandate that is being developed and hopefully rolled out for all of Europe. There are still specific countries like Austria, like the Netherlands, where I'm originally from, like Hungary, like Cyprus, where they don't even allow to disclose more than 0.5% of your shareholders, even if they would have it, right? So that all needs to be streamlined and eventually become universal in order to get to that European Union as one environment, I would say.
So I would close with a very warm thank you to all the participants, to the questions. And yeah, I think we have learned a lot today. Thank you very much.